Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Sheryl Noethe, Montana's Poet Laureate, and I'm talking to you on these podcasts about poetry. Some of the most important things about poetry, as I mentioned in the first podcast where I introduced myself, is using the senses, because the senses are something we share and something that connects us and we relate to. Another very important part of poetry is using the smallest details. And sometimes people think that a great poem talks about war and peace and love, but that is too big and too general. A great poem talks about the small details, lets us smell them, hear them, feel them, taste them, touch them. And if you can bring the details into your work along with the senses, you're going to be writing poetry that other people feel, taste, smell, hear, and touch. It's very important in poetry to tell the truth. One of my favorite poets named Richard Hugo said, "You owe nothing to reality. You owe everything to the truth about your feelings." Now, this doesn't mean poetry can't be completely made up and created, and yes, there was a dragon in my bedroom, and it was hiding under the bed, and when my dad came in to look, it went whoosh, and his hair turned white. It's not true, but poetry never has to be true. And another thing that's important, poetry never has to rhyme. There's free verse, and that's what I use. And if you like to rhyme, and if it's easy for you and you have fun, you're entirely welcome to. But there's a lot of ways to rhyme that are hidden inside the sentences that aren't as obvious as the rhyme that comes at the end of every line. So you are the architect of the poem. You decide how it looks. Now, when you're reading prose, which is stories and book reviews, it just fills the page. It's lines and paragraphs. But when you're writing poetry, it becomes something you build. And so it sometimes gets wiggly and looks very different. I'll find an example for you of how poems look so much different than prose. Here's an example. Here's a whole series of poems, and each one is different because the author, the poet, decided how it would be. In fact, this lesson that I opened to show you the poem, I'm actually going to read a little bit to you, because this is a lesson called I Used to Be, But Now. And I added something to it. So I added, I used to be afraid, but now. And it talked about how fear changes. When you're little, you're afraid of guys with sideburns or mustaches, or 8th graders on the bus, or the dentist, or the witch under the bed, or the thing in the mirror in the basement. But when you get older, you're worried more about car insurance and safety and good health and the people that you love, paying the bills. And this poem, this form, I used to be but now, is lots of fun. And I'm going to read you one that really surprised me, because usually kids write, I used to be afraid of the toilet. I used to be afraid of hospitals. I used to be afraid of teachers and some people on TV, and I'm going to read you this poem. I used to be afraid of my teachers. I was afraid of some people on TV, but now I'm only afraid of guys that ride motorcycles and carry guns behind their backs and ask where a person is. That was written by a 4th grade boy in Salmon, Idaho, and it gives you an idea of how really terrifying his life was. I hope it's better now. I want to talk to you about what I consider the heart of poetry, and that's the line break. I'm going to walk out the line break for you, because using the body is very important in poetry. And so I'm going to show you how I do line breaks using my body. This poem is called In the Woods. This morning, I was walking with my dogs in Greeno Park. Line break. When the dogs became so excited and began barking, making a ruckus. Line break. I looked up into the trees to see what was happening. Line break. And there was a mother raccoon and 3 babies scolding us and chittering, and the mother looked very annoyed by my dogs. Line break. I ran so fast out of the park, I beat the dogs home. That shows you how poetry uses the body, and many times poems are very much like the rhythm and the pattern of your walking. Yesterday I was in the woods with my dogs. And if you want to practice line breaks and poems by talking as you walk, you'll see how naturally it fits in with your heartbeat and your breathing. The line break tells you when to rest, when to pause. The line break can be with your heartbeat or with the need to slow down or to provide a cliffhanger. So you say, and then there I was, hanging by the skin of my teeth. And then you do a line break, go on to the next line, and the reader is drawn into what's going to happen next. So that's my physical use of the line break. And now I'm going to show you through my favorite poem as an example of the line break. This is a great example of the line break, and it's got a riddle in it. Smart. You always underline the title of a poem, although I don't name my poem until it's done, because you never know where a poem is going to take you. Smart, like the fox who grabs a stick and wades into the water deep and deeper. Notice how these important words are alone on the line. Instead of filling up the page with sentences, you have the most essential words surrounded by open space. Smart, like the fox, who grabs a stick and wades into the water deep and deeper, till only his muzzle's above it. His fleas leap up and up, out onto the stick, which he lets go. Off it floats as he swims back to shore, shaking himself dry. Is a fox smart enough to know how to lose its fleas by grabbing a stick and going into the water? Kids in the cities say yes. Kids in rural areas tell me no. But I don't know the answer. And if you find out, please let me know.